On a rainy, humid afternoon in May of 1981, a homeless woman gives birth to a baby boy at a local city hospital. The woman gives up the baby for adoption, but the baby never finds a permanent home and grows up bouncing from one foster home to another. The baby becomes a boy, the boy becomes a teenager, to eventually he turns 18 and is forced out of the system. The young man is now facing the harsh reality that is a world without the parents to guide him through life, break his fall, and be there for him for the good and bad. During the day, he works at a local diner as a dishwasher, and at night, he finds refuge in the garage of his best friend from high school. Life is hard, and the word happiness is alien to him as is land to a fish. The years go by, 1999, 2000, 2001. Then one day, he looks at the calendar and it's the year 2010. Life went by with only a handful of happy moments. Every day was a struggle just to survive, and now the young man is nearly 30, with no particular future to look forward to. That 29-year-old nobody was me back in 2010. What you just heard is, though abbreviated, an accurate depiction of my life. I really am a nobody, and I mean that in a very literal sense. My father is a complete mystery to me, though it doesn't take a genius to surmise that he was probably some random dude who knocked up my birth mother. I've never met my mother, but I do know she passed away a few years after giving birth to me. I know a few things more about her because later in life, I did some digging up of my past and was able to meet the doctor who delivered me. He was working in the same hospital for all those years, and he remembered my mom and me in particular because she made it very clear to the hospital that she was giving me up for adoption. That's how I learned my birth mother was a drug addict and that it rained on the day of my birth. Even the heavens knew it wasn't a day for celebration. So then I came into this world even though no one wanted me here. It was a worthless existence, and I lived my life as such as far back as I can remember. It's not how you think. I've never lived a life of crime or did anything malicious. I only meant that in a sense that I was just another parasite leeching off this planet. It would have actually been better had my life continued that way. But who knew a simple delivery job could have changed my life so dramatically, and unfortunately in a detrimental manner. It was a quite chilly night in the spring of 2010. I had work the next day, so I was getting ready for bed. As soon as my head hits the pillow, I feel my phone vibrate next to me, and I proceed to check the message. It was from my best friend, the same one from high school who provided the space in his garage for me when I had been forced out of the system. His name is Rafael, but I call him Rafa, and is the closest thing to a family that I've got. His parents had immigrated from Dominican Republic and gave birth to Rafael in the stateside. They began poor and moved from one bad neighborhood to another, to eventually own their own home in a nice neighborhood. So naturally, his mom was against me moving into their garage, seeing as how I was an orphan who grew up in some of the worst places in the US. She gave up the fight only when Rafa refused to continue attending college if she didn't allow me into their home. Not that it makes any difference in this story, but I want to point out that she's a nice lady. She was just being a mom, and there's nothing inherently malevolent about that. Had it not been for Rafa's parents taking me in, best case scenario, I'm still alive, but living out on the streets. So anyhow, what I'm trying to affirm is that I owe a lot to Rafa. To that end, it shouldn't surprise anyone that when Rafa texted me at midnight asking for help, I didn't even have to think to oblige and start getting ready to go out. In the text, Rafa just mentioned that he was doing his job, but that his partner didn't show up. Rafa had graduated from college with an accounting degree, and he was working for a sizable corporation at the time. He was earning good money, was married, had 2 kids, and just bought a house a couple of years back. But he was having some financial issues after his wife had gotten laid off from her job, and she couldn't manage to land another well-paying full-time gig. I was aware that he took on another job, a part-time job, but I still found it a bit weird that he was working so late. Regardless, this is Rafa we're talking about here, so I didn't ask questions other than the address of the place he was waiting for me. I must have driven about 20 minutes, and I'm almost at the address Rafa had given me. I recognize this neighborhood. It's part of town where there are lots of commercial buildings, and it's really not the best place to be after dark. I arrive at the address, and the place is familiar because it's the same self-storage building I had once used before. From what I remember, the office closes at 6 p.m. and you can access the storage until 10 p.m. But somehow Rafa is in the parking lot, standing in front of a white box truck while smoking a cigarette. I park the car, get out, then walk toward Rafa and say, "Yo, what up, Rafa?"
Hey bro, thanks for coming.
"Yo, are we okay to be here?"
Don't worry about it. I've got an arrangement made with the owner, so it's all good.
"Alright, that's cool. What do you need me to do? Let's get this done quick, man. I've got work tomorrow."
Alright, couple hours tops, man. We need to move some boxes from the storage into the truck and deliver them to a location. Follow me.
We walk inside the self-storage building, and Rafa stops in front of one of the larger storage space. He pulls up the roll-up shutter, and what waits for us in the room is full of white boxes the size of an average shoebox. Rafa normally jokes around a lot, and he never stops blabbering some random things, but on this night, he's quiet as a mute. I'm not too concerned yet, but it's still weird, so I ask, "You okay, bro?"
Yeah, I'm fine. What makes you ask that? I'm good.
"Yeah, I'm just saying, if you need money, you know I got your back, right?"
Nah, it's good. I'm doing this job, right?
"That's cool, but I just want you to know, I can't give you much, man, but if you need it, I can lend you 5,000 the first thing in the morning. That's all I've got, but it's yours."
Alright, shut the fuck up and let's just be done with this perra.
We both laugh and start loading the boxes into the truck. I don't know what's inside, but I can hear the occasional sound of some tiny things moving inside. It's like listening to Tic-Tac candies sliding from one side to the other. It may be that I'm just feeling paranoid for being in this neighborhood so late at night, but nonetheless, I've got a real bad feeling about this. Once everything's loaded in the truck, we both hop inside the cabin, and Rafa drives out of the self-storage parking lot. I try to initiate a conversation with Rafa, but every time he shuts it down with short answers like,
Uh-huh. Yeah. Sure. Okay.
Rafa is really acting out of character, and I just had to know the contents inside the box, so I say to him, "Rafa, who are you working for anyways?"
Oh, it's a company my brother-in-law works for. You know, the older one, Adam. He knew April and I were having money problems, so he got this gig for me since I can do it on the side.
"What kind of company is it?"
I think it's some kind of a drug company.
"You mean pharmaceutical company?"
Yeah, that's what I meant, smartass. Mama culo.
"Fuck you, man. You're the one with the college degree, not me." "So, do you know who we are delivering this to? And what the fuck is in the box?"
Dude, what's with all the questions? Don't tell me you're fucking scared.
"Rafa, I'm serious. Do you know who or what company we're delivering this to? And stop dicking around and just answer."
No, but does it matter? Bro, it's a job my brother-in-law hooked me up with. That makes him the uncle of my children and the brother of my wife. I trust him, man. I trust that he ain't gonna make me carry some illegal shit.
Then why the fuck do you look like you just stole something?
Man, I didn't steal anything.
I'm not saying you literally stole something, you fucking idiot. Just look at yourself and listen to yourself speak. We've known each other since we were 14. I know when you're fucking lying, and I sure as hell know when you're trying to hide something. What we are doing right now is not fucking normal. Tell me what sort of company accepts delivery after midnight, and even if they do, why would they need a fucking part-time driver who works as an accountant during the day to make deliveries for them? Isn't it a little too convenient that they just happen to hire a guy who's got money problems and is pretty much willing to do anything to earn some extra dollars? Rafa, this isn't normal. We just came out of a self-storage building with bunch of boxes that you have no clue of the contents inside. It's 1:30 a.m. right now, and we are driving to a location that accepts delivery at this odd hours. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me that you can rationalize the shit that we're doing right now. Rafa has that look on his face like his mom walked in on him while he's jerking off. He doesn't say anything for about a minute, but then he breaks the silence.
Adam came home the other day and wanted to speak to me in private. He told me there was a way for me to solve all my money problems and suggested I take this delivery job. I asked him what I was delivering, and he told me it was some type of a secret drug that's still in its testing phase. He also told me it was from a legit company and that I wasn't doing anything illegal. He paired me up with his friend who was already doing the delivery for a few months now, and that friend was supposed to work with me tonight, but he never showed up.
It didn't sound right. I just knew his brother-in-law had him involved in something illegal. Yo, stop the truck. Rafa pulls over and looks down at the steering wheel without saying anything. Rafa, you realize easy money always spells trouble, don't you?
I get what you're saying, man, but I got a second loan on my house. I maxed out all my cards, and April and I owe more than 10 grand to our parents. I either take a chance on this or I lose my house, man.
Your parents had nothing when they came to this country. How the fuck do you justify doing something illegal for a fucking house? Sell it, rent something that you can afford, and fucking downsize. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Shit, chill, man. We don't know that we're doing anything illegal.
Oh, really? Really, you fucking moron. I pull the keys out of the ignition, jump out the truck, and proceed to open the rear cargo compartment. I grab a box and come back to the cabin, then cut it open with the keys. Inside, I see rough crystal-like substance packaged in small clear plastic bags. I'm fucking furious, so I said, Rafa, you fucking dipshit, that's crack, and we got a full truckload of that shit sitting pretty right behind us.
Shit, hijo de la gran puta. Kyle, I didn't know.
Drive the fucking truck. We get caught with that amount of crack, and we'll never spend another day outside of a jail cell.
Where do I go?
To the delivery location, you fucking moron. If you're dealing with people that can move this much crack, what do you think happens to us and to your family if we don't get them delivered? Rafa gets the truck moving again, and I continue talking. How many runs did you promise to do?
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know? You've made the deal with Adam. How the fuck do you not know?
I know, but he just told me I should make the run until I pay off all my debts and make some extra for the rainy days.
Do you know what that means?
What?
It means we're stuck doing this until they don't need us. And who knows what they'll do to us when they don't need us anymore. You said your partner didn't show up tonight, right?
Wait, you don't think...
Yes, I do think. Rafa stops the truck as soon as I say those words and says,
Get out of the truck.
What?
Get out now, and you don't have to get yourself involved in this. Come on, man. I can't get you killed over my dumbass mistake.
Just keep driving. These people you're dealing with, they know everything. And what they don't know now, they'll find out eventually. I'm already involved, so just keep driving. I knew that wasn't necessarily true, but in that moment, I just couldn't abandon Rafa like that. We drive for another 10 minutes and arrive at the delivery location. To my surprise, it's not some abandoned construction site or a junkyard, but from the outside, it looks like a legit business. We enter the basement parking lot and wait in the truck. Then a few minutes later, several men in white lab coats come out and take all the boxes inside the building. We get paid on the spot by a man in a black suit and leave the building right away. The next 6 months, we are called to make 20 more deliveries. 14 of them were local deliveries, and we got paid $5,000 each run. The rest were out-of-state runs, and we got paid $10,000 for each of those deliveries. I didn't want any part of that money, but Rafa continued to give me half the cut. I just put them in a box and didn't spend a dime of it. Rafa, on the other hand, used the money to pay off his debt and has some extra set aside for the rainy days, as he puts it. One day after work, I was browsing the web, checking out sports box scores and reading some news articles when one particular news story caught my eye. It was about a wave of a new deadly synthetic drug on the streets, and my jaw dropped when I scrolled down to find an image attached to the article. The drug in the picture looked exactly the same as the one we had delivered for the past 6 months. Not only that, when I did additional searches on similar drugs and crimes committed after taking those drugs, they revealed to be all in the areas of the places we had delivered our package. It was clear as day. Rafa and I had played a huge role in spreading the drug and making them accessible to tens of thousands of victims. I was born a worthless orphan and was poor all my life, but never did I do anything on purpose to hurt someone. My conscience was clear. But now, ironically, the friend who had rescued me from an even more miserable existence has ruined the only thing that was good about my life. Honesty and clear conscience. He had taken them away from me, and there was no redemption for that. Nearly a year had passed after that night, and the box with the cash inside was still in my closet, untouched. I didn't know what to do with that. I was not spending them, and that wasn't something that I even debated in my mind. I thought about donating them, but giving away blood money didn't sit right either. So I just left them in the closet, left them sitting there to collect dust. My only consolation was that the delivery request had stopped. But even that was taken from me when they called again for additional deliveries. They told Rafa the location of the truck, and we were ordered to make the delivery right away. Call me a monster or a piece of shit, but I swear to you, I had no choice. I made the delivery that night and got paid by the same man who would always give us the money after the delivery. He may not be at the top of the food chain, but he was definitely part of the backbone of this operation. After much contemplating, I went to the police station the next day to confess everything. But it wasn't meant to be. The same fucker who paid us on every delivery was talking to an older officer who looked to be in charge, and they looked as chummy as Cheech and Chong. I turned around and got myself out of there as quickly as I could. I thought about going to the FBI with the information, but at that point in time, my confidence in the authority was non-existent. It was probably the right call because after a couple of weeks, I saw the same money man in a picture on an online article featuring some local politicians and big businessmen. This guy has some serious connection, and he wasn't even the top dog. So imagine the kind of influence the money man's bosses possessed. This was not a fight I could win. I've made 5 more deliveries after that and had made an arrangement with a broker to get myself out of the country. I suggested to Rafa to do the same, but he refused. One day in 2012, I packed all my money in a backpack and crossed the border to Mexico. I didn't stay there for long though. It was just too close from the US. I eventually crossed several more borders and ended up settling in an unnamed country in South America. Once I felt safe and got my life back on track again, I began to investigate the trails of all the drugs we had delivered. From what I can gather, the drugs we had initially delivered were bath salts. If you don't know what that is, just do a search for the face-eating man of Florida and you'll get tons of results on the drug. The second round of deliveries that we had made 1 year after the initial deliveries were Flaca. It's a different synthetic drug from the bath salts, but it has pretty much the same devastating effect on those who use it. For comparisons, it has similar effects to cocaine and LSD, but excessive use can lead to anxiety, paranoia, and hallucinations. People get extremely violent in certain situations, case in point, the face eater of Florida, the man who slashed his own throat, the man who ate his roommate, the man who overpowered several officers. All those cases are linked. But here's the scary part of the whole thing. The thing you see on the news, they are just the tip of the iceberg. If you dig deeper into the trail of the drugs, you start to see a pattern emerge of a well-organized experiment that's being performed throughout the world. It's not just the US, this is a worldwide affair, and they're not doing it for the money. I say that because these drugs are cheap. They specifically target the low-income neighborhoods. And don't bring color and race into this because it affects poor people of all regions. Another reason why I say it isn't profit-driven is because the fad doesn't last long. They test one type of drug, get the results, and cut off the supply. They develop a different formula, test it, get the results, and cut off the supply again. If you have any idea of how long it took for the US government to significantly reduce the smuggling and usage of cocaine over the years, then you'd understand how implausible it is for these drugs to come and go in a span of mere months. I hypothesize that whoever is responsible for these drugs, they are putting them out on the streets to develop a drug that can potentially destroy a country from within. Imagine at some point in the near future, they perfect the formula to the point that, say, 99% of people who ingest the drug become mindless killing machines, driven by anger, paranoia, and maybe even something as instinctive as hunger. They can contaminate a citywide water source with the drug, or in a smaller scale, they can potentially develop an aerosol form of the drug and contaminate the air circulation system of a large shopping mall, where at any given day, you've got hundreds of people shopping. Just think of the chaos that will ensue when hundreds of insane men and women all rush out of the contaminated mall, then start attacking the hundreds of the oblivious passerby on the streets. The bloodshed and death toll would be extensive, but even more damning would be the psychological effect it'll have on the population around the globe. People will refuse to go outside unless absolutely necessary. Congregating in large groups will undoubtedly become illegal. Heavy police presence will be demanded by the public, and that expectations will be met. When you look at it in the grand scheme of things, a few hundred people dead from a population of 7 billion worldwide, no matter how tragic and gruesome the murders were, from a logistical standpoint, it would barely make a dent on the human race as a whole. But that's beside the point, because human beings rarely think logically for the reason that we are emotionally driven creatures at the very core of our instinct. The bottom line is, you don't need a large-scale disaster to make the general population willingly give up their rights as self-respecting human beings. Through videos and literature, we've been brainwashed to believe in some of the most medically improbable things, such as the zombie apocalypse. Mentally, the general population is ready to accept any apocalyptic scenario that's thrown at them. If you can create a chaotic situation that mimics a zombie outbreak on the surface, even though the underlying circumstances are completely different, people will still react the same manner they would in a zombie outbreak circumstance. The vast majority will not fight against intrusion of privacy in the ways of telephone tapping, spying on their internet activities, and random searches, all in the name of security. As the government's grip on our freedom reaches the point of absolute control, the zombie outbreak-like act of terrorism will cease to occur, and people will naturally continue to support the totalitarian government. Order will be restored, and commerce will resume, but the world we live in would have become a completely different place than how we remember. Over the course of 2 to 3 generations, the new world that is so alien to us will become the norm for our children, and even more so for our grandchildren. The golden era of personal freedom that was the 20th and 21st century will end, and it would go down as merely a blip on the radar if remembered at all. This new world will be the beginning of the golden age for those in power, and it's unlikely that will ever cease. The powers that be don't want to end this world. It's so good for them, why would they? However, they'll continue to push for more control and conformity of the general population until there's nothing to take away from us. That is the end game of all these past experiments on you, the citizens of every country around the world. History teaches us that these atrocities have been perpetrated ever since the dawn of human civilization. Some of the most recent examples of these government-backed experiments include Project MK Ultra, QK Hilltop, Artichoke, and Operation Midnight Climax, which were mind control programs performed on unknowing and unconsenting average citizens. LSD and other forms of mind-altering substances were administered on innocent civilians in the name of science, progress, and national security. Other non-drug psychological experiments include electroshock therapy on children, the Monster Study, which again was performed on children, and the famous Milgram experiment. These are all officially documented cases that you can easily look up online. They are not conspiracy theories, and they all happened in recent history. I should also mention that these are examples from the US only, and I didn't get into the European, the old Soviet Union, China, and Japan's immoral experiments performed on the average citizens. These practices have been prevalent in human society for hundreds of years, but the advent of modern medicine and science has opened the Pandora's box, so to speak, to which ultimately will destroy humanity as we know it today. I wish I had more information on the ongoing and also the future experiments, but I'm afraid this is all I know. Currently, there is a small group of very brave people who are fighting for our rights and future, but that good fight is waning fast, and it'll soon disappear. A few months ago, I found out that Rafa and his family were killed in a car accident. I don't think it was an accident. I have a firm belief that he was taken out. Assassination of past employees and of those who oppose the powers that be seem to be their preferred method of wiping the slate clean. The practice has served the masters well over the years, so I suppose if it ain't broke, I don't know what else to tell you but to keep an eye out for news on the new synthetic drugs in your area and continue being vigilant. That's all I've got for you. Don't bother trying to contact me. You won't be able to reach me after I send you this message. I know I'm sending you 10,000 words of a big mess, but I hope you can understand I've never been much of a writer. Now it's up to you to decide what information gets included, what doesn't, and to make a story out of my cluttered sentences. You have my full permission to rewrite and publish the story. Well, actually, hopefully you'll decide to publish. I also have one final request. I've been noticing that you began to do more conspiracy theories themed stories, and it is my personal opinion that more of those stories deserve more attention from the general public. I can't tell you what to do with your channel, but I wanted to tell you to try to devote more time on those topics and think of it as a public service announcement. That's it from me. Thank you and goodbye. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of the story, and first allow me to thank Kyle for sending in his story. I don't know what to make of this story because scientifically it's plausible, but from a logistical standpoint, it would be an exceedingly gargantuan task. I get the underlying incentive of the powers that be behind such project. I mean, the push for control and conformity of the masses by the influential and wealthy is nothing new. However, I'm personally never able to come to a conclusion when I think of the lengths those in power would go to achieve total control or near total control. On one hand, I believe the human greed for power and wealth can be limitless in some individuals. On the other hand, I believe there are enough influential people who stand with us and in many ways counterbalance the work of those seemingly sociopathic but more likely psychopathic individuals. As the saying goes, where there is good, there is always evil, but in my case, I would phrase that as where there is evil, there is always good. But even with my normally optimistic view of life, it is impossible to ignore the fact that most clinical psychologists agree with the assessment that a large percentage of politicians and CEOs are in fact sociopaths, which means we are governed and influenced by people with no conscience and empathy. Let me just stress the fact that there is no conclusive statistical evidence of what I just said, but when the vast majority of a group responsible for studying the human mind come to a such conclusion, it's not something that you can dismiss as insignificant. When people think of sociopaths and psychopaths, they think of mass murderers and serial killers, but the reality is that the majority of them never end up killing someone with their own hands, and they rarely end up in prison. Sociopaths and psychopaths are generally considered to be smart. A lot of people think they have higher IQs than the general population, but in reality, most of their advantage come from their cunning traits. They are extremely capable of finding the weaknesses in things, people, and the social fabric, and etc., like a shark sniffing blood in the water from miles away. So it's not hard to imagine that a smart sociopath could avoid prison and find other less conspicuous ways to satisfy his or her need for controlling and harming others. And if you think about it, what better ways than through politics and big business? At the end of the day, it's tough to disagree that nothing is out of reach for people like that. So regardless of the method, it is a frightening reality. And that's all I've got to say about the story. Once again, thank you for the story. Alright, that is it folks for today. I apologize if I sound a little different on this part of the audio. I had another useless story recorded, but in the last minute of editing, I decided to not include it on this video because I think there have been too many of them lately. So I'm just quickly recording this tiny portion of the outro in my kitchen, feeling pretty tired because I only slept 3 hours last night. Anywho, enjoy the rest of the week, be safe out there, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.